In case you hadn't guessed it already from the signs that are behind me, today on Go Island we're going to experience the Qualicum Beach Museum. Today on Go, weaving to help memory for those with dementia, riding the rails on a pump car in Port Alberni, and a tattoo artist tryout. All that and more right here on Go. You know, I will admit that this is my first time visiting the Qualicum Beach Museum and pulling up into the little parking lot, seeing the fence. It's quaint, it's lovely. It makes you want to come in and spend some time. The first thing I notice, of course, is the brick. Natanya Waddell is the manager here at the Qualicum Beach Museum and Archives, and there's a story behind the building even.
Yes, the building is the original powerhouse to Port Alberni, and it was basically dismantled in Port Alberni in the early 1990s and brought over here to Qualicum Beach piece by piece by the Historical Society that had formed already by then, and basically rebuilt brick by brick here on site by a group of very dedicated volunteers.
Wow. How long did that take, do you know?
It took over a year to put it all together, and that was people working and parts being donated by local businesses, and that's what, you know, it was built with the purpose of housing a museum at the time.
Okay.
Yes.
This guy behind us, this is quite a character, it looks like, looming over the garden, over our shoulders. Who's this fella?
This is the hermit. His real name was Giuseppe Roth, so it's an Italian name, and he came to Qualicum Beach in the 1930s, and he owned and operated the first museum in town called the Museum of Nature Art in an area that we now know as Hermitage Park, which is a subdivision up from the Qualicum Beach Elementary School.
Even his name, you hear the name the Hermit, he just kind of kept to himself.
He was a secluded man, lived by himself, never married, never had children. But like I say, he did operate a museum, so he welcomed the public into his house. The museum was actually located into his home. Okay. So he was, you know, he liked to interact with people, but what he was really, really a big believer in was nature. His museum, as I said, was called the Museum of Nature Art because he believed there was beauty all around us, surrounded in
And this sign
in
here, Kelly, we looked at it earlier. Kelly Robinson's behind the camera today. Crystal Spring Park. Now, he named a spring that ran through his property, Crystal Spring?
I'm not sure if he named it or if it had already been named by someone else beforehand, but it was known as the Crystal Spring. And when visitors came to his museum for 25 cents at the time, they were allowed...
This was in the 30s and 40s or something for 25 cents?
Yeah, they were allowed a sip of the spring. So he was known for, you know, making sure he took advantage of everything that was available to him.
So those the early days maybe of bottled water. Instead of collecting it though, you just stick your lips in and take a little sip and get charged 25 cents.
Well, it was fresh, pure water.
Now, another thing that Natanya told me off camera before we started was that this hermit guy didn't think women should be working, and he didn't like television.
He was against television because when television came in and was all of a sudden found in every household, the visits to the museum dropped drastically, and he did find that people didn't have the urge and the sense of going to discover what was around them. They would rather sit back in their living room and watch TV and let the story be told to them. So he did think that it was not a good thing. It was a disadvantage, of course, for himself, but he did think it wasn't a good thing for human race either.
Okay, so he might not be too happy. Women here, all women, Kelly behind the camera, woman, you, me, all doing this for television. He'd be rolling over in his grave right now. We're going to do one last thing in the next minute here, and your front door here, Natanya, is beautiful. It says, "Welcome, enter here."
And done by local artists, and it does try to portray not only, of course, the beautiful site that we are on, overlooking the ocean here in Qualicum Beach, but also you can see the dinosaurs and whatnot, and that is the paleontology aspect of our collection. We do have a very, very large fossil dinosaur bone collection in our museum, so that's what it's made to represent.
And we are going to have a little look inside at some of that collection later on this edition of Go, and right now everything seems adult-oriented, but there's a big children's event coming up on September 29th here at the Qualicum Beach Museum. We're going to tell you about that. And we're even having a little bit of a historical theme today, because later on Go Island we're going to visit the Courtney and District Museum and Paleontology Center to find out more about dinosaurs, but that's later in Go. What's coming up next? Well, let me just check here. Nancy Wilmot in Port Alberni takes a ride on an old hand pump car along a railroad there. It's been restored and she gets to try it out firsthand. But before any of that, it's a hands-on therapy for residents of the Nanaimo Travelers Lodge. Sayori Weaving is helping people there with dementia. Here's Derek Johnstone. You know, Nancy, I think that pumping on that old hand car might be the next craze in fitness. And if you want to start up a class doing that, I'll join you. You can hold me to it. We're here inside the Qualicum Beach Museum and Archives. You're watching Go Island, and it's a neat little story here. This is Rosie. A young girl and her father were just spending a day at the beach here in Qualicum Beach, and they found a little bone, and the father said, there's more to it than this. And they unearthed the entire skeleton of a walrus. And then it was sent off to Ottawa. It was reconstructed. It was housed here in the Qualicum Beach Museum for 10 years. And now it's back in Ottawa, but they sent this nice little case here with a rib bone from Rosie the walrus. And this is only a small part of the paleontology section here at the Qualicum Beach Museum, because of course that is the history of the land that we walk in. We'll be back with more on this edition of Go Island after a short break. Still ahead on Go Island, reconstructing a skeleton in Courtney, and Melanie Panada tries her hand at being a tattoo artist. That and more from the Qualicum Beach Museum coming up on Go. Hi, Kelly Robinson behind the camera today. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4, and I'm not sure that my cursive writing meets the standards that I see in this old-fashioned classroom upstairs at the Qualicum Beach Museum. I think that's what my letters are supposed to look. I really like the feel in here. Learn to think, think to learn. I think it's safe to say that today we learn so that we can get a job, make some money, and make a living, and instead of just learning for the knowledge and the sake of learning. There is a Children's Museum Day on Saturday, September the 29th here at the Qualicum Beach Museum. It runs from 1 until 4. You can get details on their website or through their Facebook page. From one museum to another, Alison Bly now goes behind the scenes at the Courtney and District Museum and Paleontology Center to experience a marriage of a sort between science and art as they reconstruct a dinosaur skeleton. That is a whirligig. Now, why is Natanya Waddell, manager here at the Qualicum Beach Museum, twirling a whirligig? Well, because Children's Museum Day is coming up on September the 29th. We're here inside the powerhouse to tell you why in just a minute. This is one of the activities that kids get to make?
This is one of the activities that they do get to make, and a whirligig is an old-fashioned toy. It was generally made with big buttons that they would find in mom's or grandma's button collection, and basically with rope, and you connect them and make them twirl around. Whirligig. Lots of fun.
How crazy is it on Children's Museum Day with all the kids?
It is very busy, gets extremely busy. It attracts between 300 and 400 people to the museum grounds. We have different stations throughout the whole grounds around the museum buildings. And so you'll have whirligig, you'll have, we're going to make them mini totem poles, old-fashioned wooden boats. They do fossil rubbings to connect to our paleontology collection, part of the museum displays. And so
some
forth.
old hand-scrubbing laundry, wash basin stuff. I'll bring their
Tiger
laundry.
Lily Farms is here with wagon rides, and we will also have the local marimba band playing their music.
Awesome.
And, adding to the wonderful atmosphere of the event.
Great atmosphere. We were just commenting on how the whirligig's a bit hypnotizing. You can just sort of zen-like.
It's a relaxing thing to do once you get it going.
After you've been to Children's Day. No, all the kids
During.
It sounds great. Now back to the totem pole. The kids will be using toilet paper rolls.
Toilet paper rolls, because it's all about, it is really meant to be a series of activities or stations that reminisce of old-fashioned days, and in the old-fashioned days we used everything up. Nothing was wasted, and so we like to pride ourselves in that we're trying to do the same here while still putting up a great event for the museum and for the children in the community.
Awesome. Sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you, Natanya. We've only been having really scratching at the surface at the Qualicum Beach Museum here today. It's worth a visit when you've got some time to look around and find out a lot of the interesting history of Qualicum Beach. We'll be back with more on this edition of Go Island. In the meantime, we're throwing things over to Melanie Panetta because she's trying her hand at a new career. I think someone might let her give them a tattoo or something. I don't know. I don't think I'd let her ever tattoo me. Melanie's got a pretty good gig over there, and I don't think I would let her give me a tattoo, no matter how good or bad she might seem at that particular job. That brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island, and I'm standing here in the kitchen upstairs at the Qualicum Beach Museum and Archives, and this is how people used to have to do their laundry. Incredible. We think we're busy and have too many chores and things. I don't know who would have time to do laundry this way, but then I guess you wouldn't be spending so much time on the computer, of course, because those weren't invented yet. I had a washing machine once, I guess it was from the early 70s. It was called the Liberator, and I wondered if the next version that came out in maybe 1980 was actually called the Liberated. Don't feel that way though when you're hauling laundry load after laundry load after laundry load. But anyways, I'm digressing. Thanks for watching this edition of Go Island. Come on out and participate in Children's Museum Day on Saturday, September the 29th from 1 until 4 here at the Qualicum Beach Museum. You can get full details on their website or through their Facebook page. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.